Good morning. This is your time and place set for a special meeting of the Taxicab Authority Board of the State of Nevada. It is Monday, August 15 at 9 a.m. We are at the Nevada State Business Center, 3300 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 400, the Nevada Room, Las Vegas, Nevada. Madam Secretary, are we on the record?
We are on the record.
Thank you. I will call us to order. Present, the record should indicate our board members Decker, Soderberg, Vice Chairman Thompson, and myself, Dan Reeser, Chair. And I would ask Member Decker to lead us in the pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, has this meeting been posted with the open meeting law?
Yes.
First item of business for us today is to take public comment. This matter is set on our agenda pursuant to Nevada law to allow any member of the public who wishes to address the board on matters within its jurisdiction. No action may be taken on the public comments. Is there any member of the public that would wish to address the board? Seeing none, I will close public comment. The purpose of this special meeting, which has been set for today and tomorrow, is to hear the application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity by the applicants Brent Carson and Claudia Maria Hoppner of Independent Cab Company and a request for 35 taxicab medallions. We will take appearances of counsel in this matter. First.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Administrator. My name is Brent Carson. I am in a dual role as attorney for Independent Cab Company, but I'm also a member of that LLC as well. With me is my wife, Claudia Marie Hoppner, and she is also an owner and an applicant.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board and Mr. Administrator. My name is Mark Trafton. I represent Whittlesey Blue Cab Company and Henderson Taxi.
Morning, Bob Winter for Desert Cab.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Administrator. My name is Keith Gibson, and I represent Nevada Yellow Cab, Nevada Checker Cab, and Nevada Star Cab.
Are there any other appearances to be made before the board this morning?
Mr. Chair, Bob Winter.
Yes.
I had mentioned before we started, and just joking, but Jason Awad, Lucky Cab, his sister died, so he won't be here. He says we can proceed, but he will not be appearing.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you
for making record on. I will note for the record that pursuant to Nevada Administrative Code 76.888 subsection 2, that the authority is a party of right. Administrator Armstrong, are you appearing on behalf of the authority?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary matters by way of motion or otherwise to be heard by the board?
Thank you. Again, my name is Brent Carson, attorney and applicant for Independent Cab. I spoke to the administrator last week. I have a witness, Clark County Commissioner Tick Seegerblom. He has hearings today that are scheduled, and I was just asking, he was going to zoom in when he's available. So I was just going to ask if it would be okay if we take him out of turn or whatever, whenever his availability is. So,
But today or tomorrow?
Today or tomorrow. I just called Gloria, his administrative assistant, and I said I'd call her at the first break to see if I have an idea.
Granted without objection.
No, good.
No objection. Thanks you. And my second matter was last month at the agenda hearing, Member Soderberg asked a question as to the amount of medallions that were currently in use, and I was wondering if he has received a response to that request.
I don't know that that's necessarily within the purview of this hearing. It was a different hearing and for a different purpose, so.
Would I be privy to that information somehow as a public hearing?
That was a request to staff for a confidential report. I mean, they've done what they needed to do and we've done what we needed.
Can I ask, was it provided? I don't need the number. Was it provided? The information requested.
If you tie up some relevance along the line when you present your case, then we can talk about that. It's like asking me if something we heard 6 months ago has been handled by the agency. It's not cognizable at this point. You tie it up somehow. Any other preliminary matters?
Yes, I would request the agency to take notice of its statistics going back to 2003.
When you present your case, you can make a request for an official notice. Any other preliminary matters? Thank you. For the purposes of the record, the following confidential exhibits are being placed in the record. Exhibit A, the applicant's background reports, supporting documents, and agency memoranda and reports as confidential A. As confidential B, first volume of confidential financial received by and prepared by the agency. Is Exhibit C, the second volume of the confidential financials obtained and reviewed by the agency, excuse me. As confidential D, all projections and marketing data submitted and obtained by the agency. Exhibit E, confidential also, those records requested and received by the agency from the Nevada Transportation Authority. Exhibit A through E are confidential and they are admitted. Exhibit 1 will be the notices and affidavits of publication for this meeting. They are available for inspection before you. Does any member of the public or a party wish to inspect or raise an objection to the notices and affidavit of publication?
No, sir.
No, sir. Affidavits of publication and notice shall be deemed to have been made in accordance with Chapter 706 of the NRS and NAC 706 and to be in proper form, and they are admitted. Exhibit 2 be the application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity, those portions which are public and which were filed by the applicant. Exhibit 2 is admitted. Mr. Carson, excuse me, Administrator, do you have anything before we commence? Thank you. Any member of the board? So the only thing I want to caution the members is exhibits A through E are confidential. They do not contain public records pursuant to 239.010. You may rely upon them, but we will not discuss them in a public hearing. Does everybody understand that? Carson, do you wish to make an opening?
Yes, sir.
You may commence your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're going to do a split opening, one for Claudia and then one for me. So it's beginning with PowerPoint. You want to get that queued up for me?
And just so that there's no confusion in any way, shape, or form, these are opening statements. These are not testimony. You have not been sworn yet, so you are not presenting evidence.
Correct.
Is that understood?
It is.
Okay.
I'll let you know when I switch from
No,
opening
I'll
to
let you know
applicants.
when we get ready to swear you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Mr. Chair, Mr. Administrator, TA staff, enforcement, and members of the industry. My name is Brent Carson. Yeah, she needs to go.
Yeah, it's Linda.
Start again. My name is Brent Carson. I am a member of the applicant company, independent cab company, along with my wife. You just heard her opening remarks. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm a fourth generation Nevadan. My great grandparents moved here in 1905. Legend, the legend has it is that she came to Las Vegas, my great grandmother, and she found a horseshoe sitting on a piece of property. That property was located downtown on what is now Fremont and 8th Street back in 1905. The property remained in my family's legacy and possession until it was sold to make way for the Las Vegas Container Park that is currently sitting on Vegas and 8th Street, Fremont Street. For over 100 years, my family has been in Las Vegas. Now, I think probably have to almost get 125 years. But we also had other interests in Las Vegas. We owned land, real estate, everything up and around the Tule Springs area. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that. It's up in the northern area. But my great grandparents and grandparents were visionaries. And they bought this land 65 years ago. Well, now 85 years ago. And it was passed down to my mother upon their passing. But what happened is, if you look at the thing, is that a developer came to us and said, you know, you understand that you have all this land out here in the northwest Las Vegas. Las Vegas is expanding. So they wanted to, like they said, they wanted to recognize one of Las Vegas's first families. So with them, we partnered with them and created what was called Carson Ranch, residential area for the growth that Las Vegas was sustaining. I'm humbled as heck. My grandparents and my mom and all this have enjoyed the successes of Las Vegas, but they are also giving back to Las Vegas what they had. My grandparents, my mother, you know, this is my chance to do something. This is my generation. I want to create this cab company. I want to contribute to our history, my family's history of Las Vegas. I want this something to go forward. I want to have a legacy beyond my great grandmother, my mother, and my family. This is my opportunity. My grandmother, for example, she graduated high school from the old Las Vegas High School. My mother went to Western High School. She graduated from there. My dad, he moved to Las Vegas from Kansas.
If I may, I just want everybody to be aware that Brent lost his father last Friday. So for him to be here is a big effort. So he's emotional. I can feel it too. I'm so sorry, but that's what is going on.
As it says, he moved out here to Las Vegas. He met my mother. He was married and then was drafted to go serve in Vietnam. He served as a military policeman over there. He wasn't killed in Vietnam, but Vietnam killed him. He had contracted Agent Orange and cancer. For the past 10 years, he went through chemo and it was cut out. Everything was good. And then last week, I got news that the cancer had come back and it had spread to other parts of his body. Apologize. But I'm here now to emulate my dad. He started here in Las Vegas with nothing and worked his way up to the president of Stewart Title Company. Sitting here today and not back yet with my family, because he had always taught me to finish what I started. That's why I'm here. I can tell you this, as soon as you bang the gavel, I'm on the first flight out. So I apologize. Okay. I was born right here in Las Vegas. My brother was born right here in Las Vegas. and my third brother was born in Las Vegas. I went to Bonanza High School. I was here my entire life. Upon graduation from high school, I went to UNLV, where I attended UNLV from 1998 to 1990. And we all know what happened in 1990 was one of the best years for UNLV and the cities at that time with the national championship. It was a good time to be in Las Vegas. And then I transferred from UNLV up to UNR. There it is, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Finance with a minor in Economics. But one of the things I learned at Reno is, it was the first time I was away from home. But I had a roommate that I met up in college up there. His name was Brent Michaels. And I developed a strong relationship with his family and his dad. And his dad is Emmett Michaels. He was a former FBI agent down here in Las Vegas during the mafia days, Pilatro and all that. And I mean, Mr. Winter himself knows him as well as I do, but the stories he could tell were captivating. I mean, he could not be on the edge of your seat. But anyway, that made me go to law school because I wanted to be an FBI agent. That was my goal in life. So I went to law school. Well, let's say first off, while I was at Reno, University of Nevada, I was also a member of the fraternity system, which was Sigma Alpha Epsilon. And I would later become the president of that fraternity. And notable members of the fraternity, Brian Sandoval, he was the president of the fraternity immediately, before me. And also, you got Sig Rogish and all the R&R people. Anyway, I decided to go to law school. I went to Creighton University School of Law. That's in Omaha, Nebraska. My interest was still the FBI. So when I had my first year done, I came back to Las Vegas and I clerked for the district attorney's office here in the prosecutor's office. Upon graduating School of Law, I returned home. I figured with all the information that I had in my head following law school, I better take the bar now, so I don't have to keep studying or do this anyway. So I did. And I sat for the Nevada bar. And when I received news that I had passed it, I was hired the very next day. At 26 years old, it was an offer too good to be true. So then began the next chapter of my life. I'm grateful for that decision. Being a lawyer has given me the opportunity to meet some of the greatest people in the Las Vegas Valley and the state of Nevada. More specifically, I was able to meet many of the owners, operators, and representatives in the Nevada's transportation industry, many of which are sitting here in this very room. They were my life for 20 years. Mr. Winter is like family to me. We were partners for 19 years. So I have friends sitting here behind me. I have family sitting next to me. I got my family here, but I can honestly say that I would not be where I am today, both professionally, personally, if it were not for these individuals that I've met along the way. For almost 2 decades, or for over 2 decades, I've been practicing some form of transportation law. I've successfully argued and completed the applications of dozens of new certificated carriers for the benefit of the traveling public at the Nevada Transportation Authority. I helped promulgate and develop and write the Nevada Administrative Code and Nevada revised statutes as we sit here that are in effect today. Throughout my legal career, one case particularly stands out to me. See the board up there. It is There's a case that was brought in 2001 by a nonprofit group out of Washington, D.C. They sued the state of Nevada. They sued the commissioners of the NTA, the then commissioners, Paul Christensen, Sandy Avance, Bruce Breslow, and the Nevada Transportation Authority itself. Mr. Chenoweth, the owner of Nellis Cab, Ambassador Limousine, hired my partner, Robert Winter, and I to intervene in this matter and assist the Attorney General's office in defending this lawsuit. Mr. Bell's companies hired Jeff Silver's law firm to assist in this, and Yellow Checker Star hired Eric Taylor to do the same. Make no mistake, after being out for 4 years, and I'm placed in this situation with some, if I could say, that are the best transportation lawyers in Las Vegas around, was an honor to learn from them during this pivotal case. So anyway, in that case, this is what's important, is that they were challenging the application process, regulations on how to become a limousine operator. They are not that dissimilar to the ones that we have here in front of the Taxicab Authority. They filed a lawsuit saying that scheme was unconstitutional. A bench trial was held before the Honorable Ron Paragary, now Supreme Court Judge Paragary. And these are the findings that he made during that trial. And it's very important. First finding he made was the right to earn a living in one's chosen profession is a liberty interest protected by the Due Process Clause of both the United States and Nevada Constitution. Back. But he also found that the manner in which the agency itself had projected itself and conducted itself during the licensing scheme was a violation and arbitrary and capricious of this particular gentleman's right. They said it was a violation of his due process rights by a manner of an arbitrary and capricious manner in which they handled the processing scheme. So basically, at the time this happened, it was kind of like we thought that Justice Paragary was splitting the baby. Okay, your statutes are fine as written, but we're going to give this error and say your actions were arbitrary and capricious. So the statutes themselves and the NRS and the NAC remain constitutional and the law of Nevada. He remanded the case back to the Nevada Transportation Authority based upon his rulings, and the gentleman later applied for and received a limousine company. But that's a case that really stood out to me because of the fact that it deals specifically with the transportation industry, and that we were able to come in and not only assist the state of Nevada Transportation Authority, but the Attorney General's office as well. As stated earlier, that scheme is like what we're doing here today, the licensing scheme. So what I'm going to present today, and I'm sorry that this was a lot of just background, but I don't know you guys, and I just wanted you guys to get a feel of the person who I am and what I've become. But what I will say is the evidence that I will present will show that the elements of NRS 706-8827 will be met. The evidence will show that the evidence or the elements of NAC 706-453 will also be met. I'm not going to go ahead and tell you what all those elements are because they're down in in writing. So with that, I'd like to thank you and look forward to beginning my case in chief.
Do any of the interveners want to make an opening now, or do you want to?
I'd like to make it now.
Okay.
Yes, Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, my name is Mark Trafton. I represent Whittlesey Blue Cab Company and Henderson Taxi, and we are interveners in this matter. When I was organizing my thoughts related to doing an opening statement, I realized that very quickly that all of my thoughts fell into a format called the IRAC format. And the IRAC format, IRAC is it stands for, I stands for the issue, R stands for the rule, A stands for the application of the facts or evidence to the rules, and C is the conclusion. The I in this case, the issue, is whether this board determines if the applicant has satisfied the respective burdens of proof to be granted a certificate of public convenience and necessity. I believe regarding the rule, you'll agree with me that there are 3 rules in play. There may be more, but there are 3 primary rules in play when this board is considering the evidence that it's going to apply to the rules. Are number 1, NRS 706.8827. And there are 5 elements within that rule that we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout this proceeding. The second rule that is mentioned within NRS 706.8827 is that the statute NRS 706.151. That discusses the legislative intent for this board and how this board is to promote transportation in Nevada and give some specific examples of that. Again, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, throughout this hearing. And the third and final rule that's in play here is an administrative rule, NAC 706.453. And there are some elements within that rule that the applicant must satisfy by a clear and convincing standard of proof. Again, we'll talk about all these rules, and more importantly, you'll hear evidence, you'll see evidence, and I'm speculating, if you will, that at the end of the hearing, you will deliberate. Did independent cab company satisfy its respective burdens of proof with regard to these 3 rules? And that deliberation will be the application, the A in the IRAC, applying the evidence, the facts to those 3 rules. And finally, the conclusion, yes or no. Does the applicant or has the applicant satisfied the burden of proof? That's the ultimate question. That's why we're all here. And that will be obviously your decision. You're about to hear and see evidence submitted to you on behalf of the applicant and the interveners. I'd like to give you a very brief preview of the types of evidence that you're going to hear. I have 7 quick points and then I'll be done. First is that you're going to hear that the applicant has not submitted sufficient evidence that they can properly manage a taxi cab company at this time, nor have they employed people with the requisite experience to manage a taxi cab company. Why are we presenting evidence of that? Because that's one of the requirements in NAC 706.453. As we sit here today, that hurdle has not been cleared, and you will see that. That also goes to one of the elements in NRS 706.8827. It's actually element subsection 2A, the fit, willing, and able section, ability to perform the services of a taxi cab carrier. You're going to hear quite a bit of evidence from the interveners as to the intervener's position that independent cab company, at least at this stage, is not able to perform the services of a taxi cab company, according to the statutes in the administrative code. You're going to hear evidence regarding the faulty projections contained within the application under the pro forma section. Some of the faulty projections are obvious, some of them a little less obvious, but you'll hear evidence from those with lots of experience in the taxi cab industry as to why those projections are not accurate. And you're going to hear evidence that Mr. Carson, as an attorney, has prepared at least 50 to 100 pro forma statements on behalf of clients before the sister agency, the NTA. Despite that fact, there are a lot of errors in this pro forma that you're going to hear about today. Now, why is that important? Well, if the pro forma is accurate, you will hear from at least two witnesses here today, it's very unlikely that the applicant will have the financial ability to provide continuous service as a taxi cab motor carrier in Clark County. Why is that relevant? Because it's one of the requirements in NAC 0.706453, also goes to the ability section in NRS 706.8827 subsection 2A, the fit, willing, and able section. Number 3, you're going to hear evidence that if independent cab is granted a certificate of public convenience, it's going to have an adverse impact on the existing motor carrier business. Independent cab company, I believe by its own admission through deposition and whatnot, they seek to share the market that currently exists in Las Vegas. It offers to bring no new ideas, no original ideas, for instance, serving a different area or providing a little twist on how it's going to perform service. They just want to jump in and be in the middle of the taxi cab business in Las Vegas. You're going to hear evidence about how they plan to get drivers. And we all know that in this country right now, the difficulty is getting employees. And that's just a fact. You're going to hear evidence of how the cab companies are trying to get employees. And you're going to hear evidence from Mr. Carson, how he plans to get employees. But he's also going to admit, because he did so in his deposition, that one of the ways is that you're going to hear is that some of the drivers are going to come from the existing certificate holders over to his company. Why would they do that? Well, Mr. Carson will tell you that it's because he's going to try to operate a boutique, smaller company where those drivers feel a little bit more important. Well, if that actually happens, that is going to have a negative impact on the existing certificate holders because the drivers will be shifting from the existing certificate holders over to independent cab company. That will cause an adverse impact to the existing certificate holders. That's one of the elements of 706, NRS 706.8827. Number 4, you're going to hear evidence, or I should say maybe a lack of evidence, that there hasn't been any consideration in the pro forma or the business plan about the safety of operating a taxi cab business in Las Vegas. There were no expenses accounted for in the pro forma, for example, for the camera systems that all the cab companies have, or safety training, or road supervisors. These are some of the things that my clients incorporate into their daily business plan. Because safety, not just because safety should be paramount for all of us, which it is, but it's also a requirement of the statute NRS 706.151. That's the one that's referenced within 706.8827, and it's the legislature's mandate to the Taxi Cab Authority to promote sound, safe, economic conditions for the motor transportation business. Number 5, you'll hear evidence about the necessity of taxi cabs. This is kind of a nuanced point, but you're going to hear evidence of this, and it goes to the sound economic conditions that's required by NRS 706.151. You'll hear evidence of the challenges of the existing certificate holders balancing the need to get cars and drivers out there for the traveling public, balance that with the needs of the drivers to make a living wage. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant battle. You've probably all heard, I don't know if it's still as active as it used to be, that whenever there were allocations, typically the union representatives would be opposed to that. Why? Because the more medallions on the road would make it more difficult for the existing drivers to earn a living wage. So there is a balancing act there. We don't want to push away. You're going to hear that the companies don't want to push away the drivers that they have by diluting the pool. That goes to the sound economic conditions, again, that NRS 706.151 requires. Number 6, the willingness of the existing certificate holders to serve the needs of the riding public if the certificate is denied. That's contained, that requirement is contained. I kind of reversed it, but you'll get the drift. That's a requirement that the applicant has to prove within NRS 706.8827, subsection 2, element number 4. It's that the existing certificate holders will not meet the needs if the certificate is not granted. You're going to hear testimony from Cheryl Gibbons from Whittlesey and Henderson Taxi that of course we're willing to meet the needs. We'll do everything we can, considering all the components to running a taxi cab company, to continue to meet the needs of the traveling public, even if the certificate is not granted to independent cab. Finally, Ms. Gibbons will also testify as to the proposed service that it will not benefit the traveling public in the taxi cab business in the territory to be served. That is the final requirement of 706, NRS 706.8827. And that is that the proposed service will benefit the public and the taxi cab business. You're going to hear it's not going to benefit the traveling public, and I'll leave it to the experts in the transportation industry to explain exactly why that's not going to happen. But it's also not going to benefit the motor carrier, the taxi cab business, because of the reasons that I alluded to earlier, the shifting of the drivers from one company to another. So at the end of the hearing, this is my conclusion in the IRAC. At the end of the hearing, when all the evidence comes in, I will ask you to apply what you've heard to these rules and perhaps others that I've cited. And I will be asking, and I believe you will conclude, that you must deny the application. I thank you for your consideration at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Crafton. Mr. Winter, you want to?
Winter. Thank you. I would join in about most everything Mark said. What I got most out of the opening statement by applicant was that they're nice people. They've been around here a long time. They paid their dues. They're entitled to this, aren't they? I think they expect that because they're good people, and they are. We stipulated they're morally fit, but financially fit for this? No, I'm sorry. The record in this case, based on all the motions, appeals, striking interventions, demonstrates to me that applicant thought, come on, let me in. And the industry would say, sure. And that didn't happen, so he tried to throw everybody out, which he did for a little while. We appealed that. When you go through the application, as George Balaban, our witness, has, and with the eye and the brain and the knowledge he has, it doesn't make sense. We've done our summary of the testimony and outline stuff, and he'll go into more detail, but there are so many expenses, just startup expenses, are not even in there, nothing. Could 35 medallions be introduced to this market, and would that be a huge catastrophe? No. But this application is not a good idea. George already has a shop. He's already got facilities. I mean, these are actual costs that the independent cab will have to incur, and it's not in the application. Had we not been granted intervenor status, Doris couldn't testify, but he will testify. And I think you're going to come to the conclusion that they cannot meet their obligations under 8827, and that this application, while unfortunate, because I know how badly applicant wants it, it should be denied. They cannot meet their burden of proof. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Keith Gibson on behalf of Nevada Yellow Cab, Nevada Checker Cab, and Nevada Star Cab. I join in the sentiments and issues already presented by Mr. Trapton as well as Mr. Winter, and will not reiterate those. And on behalf of Yellow Cab, you're going to, or collectively YCS, on behalf of YCS, you'll hear from Mike Balin, and he's going to testify as to the steps that the industry is taking to meet the needs of the community, and how another taxi company is not necessary given the current ridership within the taxi industry. The board's aware of the TNCs and its impact on the taxi cab industry. In fact, the statistics from the Taxicab Authority show that between 2003 and 2014, the number of trips within the industry ranged from a low, during that time, a low of 22 million to a high of 27 million. Last year, we did 8.8 million within the industry. That's a reduction of approximately almost 68% since 2014. Another company is not needed. And you'll hear testimony as to the medallions that are currently in place and when those were issued back in 2015 and why those were allocated at that time from Mr. Balin. And you'll hear about how the process of that, and that the Taxicab Authority said, hey, instead of having to come back and ask for medallions every time you need them, the Taxicab Authority said, we're going to issue the medallions and put them on the road as needed. A Tuesday in August does not need the same number of rides as a Tuesday during CES. And simple. And you'll hear about that and the challenges that we as a CPCN holder face to do just exactly what Mr. Trafton talked about, how we have to balance the needs of serving the community, as well as making sure that our drivers can earn a living wage. And unfortunately, things have increased. Everything increases. That makes it even harder for our drivers to earn a living wage. You also hear about how the current model proposed by independent cab company is a independent or a lease model. And when you have a lease driver, you don't have the same amount of control as when there's an employee model, because you can't tell a driver that's on a lease, go here to pick somebody up, because that would be exercising control, and you will then in turn no longer make them an independent contractor, and you would now make them an employee, exposing themselves to even further liability. And you'll hear of deficiencies in the performance, which from Cheryl, and you'll hear from, but you'll also hear those directly from Brent as well. So during cross-examination from Mr. Trapton, by Mr. Winter, and myself. At the end of the day, we don't believe that the current applicants satisfy the requirements of 706, 8827, and we will ask for the board to deny the application.
Just one process matter. I will date myself. This is mainly for council. We are going to apply Judge Hoyt of the 7th Judicial District's summer rules. The gentlemen may remove your coats. For those of you who ever practiced in front of Judge Hoyt, there was no air conditioning in the 7th Judicial District Court in the summertime, so he declared summer rules. Summer rules are in effect. Are you ready? Yeah. Are you ready to proceed, Mr. Carson?
Yes, I am.
Who are your witnesses?
I think we kind of had a little banter back and forth. This is weird because I'm applicant and attorney. I'm going to call myself, and I guess I'll make a statement and then allow them to retort.
And are you the only witness on behalf of the applicant?
No, there'll be another witness after that. His name will be Brian Bonifant. And then after that would be Ms. Hefner. And then after that, or depending on timing, Commissioner Sigurd will be.
And are, other than the Commissioner, is everyone else here?
Yes.
Okay, so you, Ms. Huffler, and Mr. Bonavent? Is he here?
Bonifant.
Okay, would you all please stand? Raise your right hand. Mr. Bonifant? You each swear that that the testimony that you are about to give in this hearing before the Taxicab Authority of the State of Nevada will be the truth, nothing but the truth? I do. Carson, you may call your first witness.
Call myself. Wait for him to get to the PowerPoint.
Is this the same PowerPoint?
Yes. I'll just pick up where I left off. For you guys' convenience, just this, the start of it will be the actual statutes. Where it says State of Nevada application process.
So, Mr. Carson, I'm not going to rain on your parade, hopefully, but I do want you to separate argument as a lawyer from testimony. Okay, so
I was hoping that council would keep me in check.
I may well keep you in check.
Well, that's fine, and it will be tough to. I've never called myself as a witness before, so I
Probably
apologize.
a previously wise decision.
And the Steve Martin skips on there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, as stated, my name is Brent Carson. I am the attorney and applicant for Independent Cab. I will call myself as the first witness and prepare a statement going through our evidence. I sat here and listened to the opening remarks of both myself, the applicant, but also the interveners. And for the first time ever, 2.5 years since this application has been on file, the cat is finally out of the bag.
That would be argument.
I don't think so.
Mr. Carson, we need testimony,
Okay,
facts, figures, whatever.
okay.
And you may reserve for your closing argument any legal arguments.
Okay.
But you're now
Well,
acting as a.
I think the thing we go through, we've half of their opening statement was argument on theirs. So.
But you had your opening, they've had their opening. You're now providing testimony in support of your application, not oral argument as a lawyer.
Understandable. Okay. As I said before, the application process is governed by 2 statutes currently on file, or 1 statute, 1 regulation currently on file. That is NRS 706-8827 and NAC 706-453. Those are the elements that I must address in order to obtain a certificate of public convenience and necessity. Let's turn to the first part, which is the Nevada Revised Statute 706.8827. Under subsection 2 of that statute, it states that upon filing an application, Taxicab Authority shall fix the time, place for the hearing, here we are, and they shall issue the certificate if it finds. And then there are A, B, C, D, and E, five elements that you must find.
Mr. Chairman, I may object. This appears to be argument,
I'm going to allow this in the following sense. He's, I think,
setting a foundation.
setting a foundation and
Guiding the
and
witness.
if he doesn't, pardon?
Guiding the witness.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, just setting his foundation, it's leading right now, but technical rules of evidence don't apply here. So anyway, go ahead, Mr. Carson.
Thank you.
You will get to facts, right?
Yep. Right now. All right, the first one, 706-8827A, the applicant is fit, willing, and able to perform the services of a taxi cab motor carrier. We, the applicants, submitted all of our applications and all of our financial records, personal history backgrounds to the state. The state, by and through their enforcement and by and through their financial team, determined that we were fit, willing, and able to perform the services of a taxi cab motor carrier. Not me, not you guys. That is the state's opinion. That is evidence that's going to become forward during their testimony. So you're going to hear, well, argument. So anyway, we have done that. We've done everything that you have asked for. You see all the books. All contains the financial, personal. Are we fit? Of course we're fit. They want to talk about financials. Well, you know what? We'll talk about financials with the NTA staff, whether or not they believe that's true or not. Willing. Yeah, been here for 2.5 years. We're willing to do this. I'm not with my family right now, or I should be. So if there's any testament or anything like that that says I'm not willing to be here and to do this, take great offense to it. There are other places I should be, but I'm not, because this is important to me as well. Able. Yes, we're able to do it. We're able financially and operationally. Listen, I might not be the best operator in town because I've never operated a taxi cab company. But you know what? The first person that operated a taxi company in this country never operated a taxi cab company. Are you going to hold me to a different standard? I would imagine that for me, in my position, transportation law, NRS, NAC 706, the knowledge that I contain there, benefits that I have done to the traveling community is evidence that I am of sufficient expertise to set forth and go forward with an expert taxi cab company. Thank you on that one. Subsection B that Mr. Trafton pointed out, the proposed operation will be consistent with the legislative policy set forth in, or wait, so let me go back to it one more. Yeah, the board knows, but I just want to put it in the record. On 2 separate occasions, the Nevada Transportation Authority, a sister agency to this, examined, went through the process, and on 2 separate occasions found that both of us were fit financially and operationally, willing and able to perform the services of a common motor carrier in the state of Nevada. The state has already made that finding twice, much to the dismay of these guys who intervened on us on that at that time too.
I'd object to that. It's not really argumentative. It's
Well, it's what they're here doing today. They're trying to keep me out. They tried to keep me out then. And you know what? It was the board. It was the authority that made their decision that we were fit, willing, and able to operate. Thank you.
Just for the record, your
I'm
objection
comfortable
was
that I'll
noted.
withdraw.
Okay, so let's talk about the 706-151. I have it put up on the board for you for your convenience.
Just so the council.
I'm going to lay the foundation again on these type of
No,
questions.
I'm letting it in for bias, interest, prejudice.
Okay.
And I apologize, Mr. Winter, and all these guys, but I'm going to lay some, it's going to be a speaking thing that I'm laying foundation on 706-151. These are the elements that Mr. Trafton talked about in his opening statements.
Just for the record, I think it's fair game for you to set, this is the standard, this is how I'm
Okay.
complying.
All right, perfect. That's it. Thank you for your assistance. Under 706-151, there are, three standards, basically. One is to foster sound economic conditions in the transportation industry. The second one is kind of strange in that it's encourage the establishment and maintenance of reasonable charges, but we already know that the charges are governed by the tariff, which are set by you guys. So there's not, that's a given. And then the other one would be discourage any practices that tend to create competition or detrimental to the traveling public. So let's talk about the first one there. Okay. Fostering sound economic conditions. We're coming to you asking to be regulated the exact same way that they are being regulated. We don't want anything more. We don't want anything less. But what we want is to be put in the same ball field. We want the same position. How can that, if we're offering the same service that are intending to offer the same services, how is that detrimental? How is that not fostering sound economic decision? You're going to hear. About a year ago, Member Decker appeared on the radio to a radio station probably nobody hears of, but it was NPR. And he was alongside, I believe it was NTA Commissioner David Newton, and they were talking about the transportation industry. So let me see what he had to say. This is important because it goes to what I'm saying is that in April 30th of 2021, when Mr. Decker made that statement, and I believe he's probably would back it up today, but is that illegal rides, cash rides are rampant in the industry. In fact, Member Decker said he believed that 70% of the Uber and Lyfts and stuff on there, cash rides. That means they're operating off app. How dangerous is that? Uber and Lyft by themselves are a threat to the industry. But now let's talk about people that are faking Uber and Lyft and taking cash rides. How? This is what we need to look at, is that's the market. 70%. You do the numbers. I mean, they had 30,000 transportation network drivers at this time. The numbers are astounding because that is where we need to focus on our business. This is where we need to focus. The industry needs to focus on that business plan, that market. Because if these people are doing off-app rides, those were Taxicab customers. If they had an app and an Uber and a Lyft, they would have used that app. These are the people we need to target, not the people that are going to say, "Hey, I'll take you somewhere for $5." Because those are Taxicab riders. If they had an app, they would have been using it and they would just moved on. Now, to back that up, I spoke with former Chief Jeremy Jones at the Nevada Transportation Authority, and he was a little bit more than Member Decker. He believed it was 80% cash rides. I mean, the sheer numbers are astounding. That is where I'm looking at. If nobody is going to take on that market, nobody's going to try to get that market, I will. This is the biggest market that we need to get back as an industry. While Uber and Lyft is a problem, they're here. They're here to stay. And we need to adapt and overcome and get back the market that's intended for us. Now, my opinion, my testimony here today is I believe illegal operators pose the greatest threat to the traveling public. And why is that? If somebody picks up a guy at the MGM on a cash ride, say, hey, I'll take you over to the Bellagio, and gets into an accident, kills somebody, seriously injures somebody, who's going to pick up that tab? I can tell you this, Uber and Lyft's going to say, nah, he was off platform. He's not my employee. He's not my independent contractor. We're not insuring him. Okay. So go to his personal insurance, State Farm. They're going to be like, no, he was operating a personal vehicle for commercial use. We're denying the claim. Who's hurt? The very person that this board is trying to protect, the traveling public. Additional taxi cabs do not hurt the industry. We need to beat the TNCs where we can. And how is that? Better service, better product. But what we need to highlight is what separates cabs from Uber and Lyft. And it's our safety regulations. Member Decker's testimony. Demand is coming back.
First of all, Mr. Decker didn't testify.
I know.
So please don't.
No, I'm just saying what I've heard and listened to. Apologize to that. From what I heard on the radio, that was his statements. And that taxi cabs are definitely trying to meet the demand. Okay, so the next one was that subsection D, which I just put in the PowerPoint because it says to, establish and maintain reasonable charges. Obviously, the board has ruled at past agendas that these are reasonable charges. We're not asking for anything different for our meters. So I believe that that's kind of a given. Okay, and then if we move on to the next part, which is let me see. This is the final element of 151, which is letter E, just for those following, to discourage any practices that would tend to increase competition that may be detrimental to the traveling public or motor carrier business within the state. Look at the language of that part of the statute. What do you get out of that? It says discourage any practice that would tend to increase or create competition detrimental to the traveling public. Keyword, practice. What am I asking for in this application? We're not proposing any new practices that would be detrimental to the traveling public. Fares are set. Drivers are all permitted the same. We're governed by the same statutes and regulations. In fact, all we want to do is provide a better service out there. Is that creating or discouraging any practices? What could I possibly do to come into you and say, to get a heads up, leg up on these guys? Nothing. Discourage any practices. I can tell you here, we're not proposing any new practices. So without any new practices, how is that detrimental? It's not. It's the same. What they want to do is just keep out cars to understand that argument. I'm moving forward.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you. Now, after we looked at 706, 151 and the elements there, I believe that the testimony and evidence shows that those were met, we move back into 706-8827. And I put on the screen the two elements, basically they go hand in hand. The granting of the certificate will not unreasonably and adversely affect the carriers, and the holders of existing certificates will not meet the needs for the certificates. Unreasonable and adverse effect. We're asking for 35 cars. There's 3,530 allocated medallions. We're asking for 35. That's 1%. Less than 1% of the industry. We already heard in opening.
Person not arguing opening.
Okay,
Testimony on the element.
fine. My testimony is the adding of 35 cars will not unreasonably and adversely affect the existing carriers. How is that? That's going to be promulgated coming down the road in the next few things, but also in regards to, you're going to hear testimony from the interveners as well, that it's not unreasonable and adverse effect. Existing carriers will not meet the needs. This goes back to everybody's testimony here. You're going to hear it from everybody, including myself, is that every carrier here has medallions that they are not using. They're sitting in their desks, sitting in their drawers, not being used. This isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's their business. It's their operational. I don't see how that's a bad thing, but how can they meet the need? Existing carriers will not meet the need when they even deny the existence of the need. They're in a bubble. They're going to argue out of both sides of their mouth.
Objection, argument.
It's my testimony based upon my experience.
I want you to work harder on
I'm
giving
trying,
us
sir.
fact and not argument.
I'm trying,
Okay,
sir.
Mr. Carson.
I'm trying. My testimony is they will not meet the need because they deny the existence of a need. Simple as that. Any argument or statement from the interveners will be contrary to that statement that I just read, or read into the record, said it stated into the record. My testimony is that any evidence to the contrary will be self-serving statements from the industry trying to protect themselves. And any information that is brought forth is based solely on competition, which is not allowed under the statute and regs, not allowed for you to even
Objection,
contemplate.
misstates the regs and the regulating and statutes and the regulations.
Well, and again, you're
Well, there's-
arguing to us some
No.
interpretation of the law. So
Okay, I'm just saying, as you are well aware, competition is not a factor
Objection.
for unreasonable and adverse effect.
I'm going to strike that, Mr. Carson. That's not testimony. You're now making an argument about the interpretation of a law. You're supposed to be providing testimony, not legal argument.
NRS 706-8827. Subsection 3 reads, The applicant for a certificate has the burden of proving to the taxicab authority that the proposed operation will meet the requirements of subsection 2. The taxicab authority shall not find that the potential creation of competition in a territory which may be caused by the granting of a new certificate by itself will unreasonably or adversely affect other carriers operating in the territory for the purposes of subsection C, or paragraph C of subsection 2.
I'll take that as a request to take administrative notice of the law.
Thank you.
We have.
For years, Maria Soto at the LV Las Vegas Visitor and Conventions Authority has become coming to these agenda hearings. And every time she's asked for more transportation. This is the transportation for the convention centers. Now, again, as Chair Reasoner pointed out, NAC 706-959 official notices is that the board can take judicial notice of her testimony and the minutes wherein she provided the testimony. Just ask for that.
Ask a question. Are you asking for judicial notice of some testimony at another hearing?
Yes.
Can we object to that?
No.
So administrative notice, we won't take judicial notice, but your objection may the basis for the objection that we can't take notice of a statement made in another tribunal.
Right. I mean, I would like to cross-examine if you're going to take witness testimony at some other hearing. I wasn't there. I don't think I can accept that testimony.
I would join in the objection. Additionally, there's been no disclosure of any minutes reflecting any reflected testimony that he's attempting to quote.
I am going to sustain the objection, but not for the grounds stated. To take official notice of a official notice in an administrative matter under the APA, you must produce it for us. You can't just say, you go look for it. So if you want to try to ask us to take administrative notice of something, official notice, you can do so, but you have to produce it for us. And this is pretty legioned under the state engineer cases that have been before the Nevada Supreme Court. State engineer can't say, I'm taking notice of everything I've ever done for the last 50 years and enforce that as a part of the administrative record. State engineer can say, in 1967, I made this adjudication and I'm going to rely upon it in this administrative case. I'm just giving you an example to give you guidance. If you can produce this, I'll then listen to that argument, but we're not going to go looking for the evidence. It's your burden of proof to produce the evidence today, Mr. Carson.
I should. The last two applications that were approved by the Taxicab Authority, Boulder Cab and ACAB. At that time, there were interveners in that application. All of the interveners said, just like they're saying today, that there was no demand. They're still here today, operating. "20 years in operation, they're operating. From January 21 through August of 22, to the present, the NTA records show that there were 63 applications for new or expanded common motor carrier certificates in the state of Nevada. 63 new applications for common motor carriers. Taxicabs are common motor carriers. yet there's only been one application here. "63 applications for new or expanded is evidence of a demand for additional transportation of the traveling public." The taxi cab industry had its choice, had its chance. This is missed opportunities. For the past 2 years, the taxi cab industry has been stating that they are having problems getting drivers. Pretty sure that would be stipulated fact. In June 2021, Chief Aquino, then Chief Aquino, at the July agenda, gave the following statistics. June 2021, there were 3,249 active TA permits. Active drivers, there's 3,200 drivers. 1 year later, June 22nd, or 2022, I'm sorry, there was 3,820 total active drivers. Permits that were issued by this authority. 571 new drivers in a year is what they got. I've done the math, and that equates to 3 drivers. They hired 3 drivers a month for the last year. Now compare that to transportation network companies. In June 2021, they had 19,000 active TNC drivers. In June of 22, 1 year later, 29,000. Approximately 10,000 new drivers came back because there is a demand that is not being met. I'm not here to criticize operations or anything. But when there is a pool of 10,571 drivers that want to work in the state of Nevada, 6% is low. You got to get more drivers. We offer, and I'll stipulate to this too, the taxi cab industry offers a better product than Uber. I will stand by that. Safer, regulated, provides jobs, provides revenue for the state, provides revenue for the taxi cab authority. Every ride we get that is not a TNC helps the industry. Taxi cab authority makes money off every trip. Companies make money off of every trip. Drivers make money off of every trip. More rides for the industry is better. All right, so we filed this application in 2019, December of 2019. Pre-COVID. This is the pre-COVID area. So September of 2000, this is just some background that I'm going to testify to. In September of 2019, then Administrator Whittemore provided the following statistics. There were 6,734 active taxi driver permits in Las Vegas. At that time, September of 2019, pre-COVID, that time there were 39,651 permitted transportation network company drivers. There were 35 530 medallions for the entire cab industry. What happened that month? You've got 6,000 drivers from the active taxi cab drivers, 39,000 TNC drivers. So you have 45,000 drivers in Nevada looking for rides, looking for passengers. And what did the taxi cab industry do that month? 1,263,617 rides in that month alone. So why are people using Uber and Lyft? How did Uber and Lyft become such a problem? These are photographs that I took. Lincoln Foundation. Photographs I've taken here. This first one was taken February 5th, 2020. Again, we're in the pre-COVID stage. How did Uber and Lyft come to be who they are? Look at this line. Look at this taxi line. This is at the convention center. See all the people standing in line? And this poor lady to the right looking like, where is there even a car coming? Is there even a taxi coming? If you're standing at the very back of that line, if I'm standing at the very back of that line, guess what I'm doing? I'm opening up an app. Because obviously there is nothing, there is no service at that taxi stand. I mean, it's a ghost town. Next. This is the other side of the convention center on the same day. Look at the lines. This is pre-COVID. They had 6,734 active drivers. Imagine being the very last person over there. Same day, different part of town. Mandalay Bay. Up in the top kind of right-hand corner, you can see this is the taxi and limo line. Okay. Okay. The line stretches. This time in the industry, there were over 45,000 cars on the road. And this was the result. The demand was still not being met. More pictures of Mandalay. Yeah. I think you get the point. Okay, next one. I'm going to move during COVID. We all know what COVID did. I mean, shut down the state. During COVID, after the state opened up, these are the numbers that were provided. In July of 21 and June of 21, that was the only one I could find, is that there were 19,000 TNC drivers. I mentioned that number earlier. And then there was 3,249 active taxi cab drivers. Half the numbers of before. There ain't 45,000 cars still on the road. Now we're 23,000 cars on the road. Go back to what I just said. How many rides did they do in September? 1.2 million with 45,000 on the road. In June 2021, they did 1.170664 with half. Go ahead. And this is what they were missing. These photographs were taken by me in June 2021. Look at the line. How many rides did they miss? How many people got fed up? Same day at the, go back one. I think it was the Cosmopolitan. Cosmopolitan, there's a line. Next. Bellagio for that whole weekend. Lines. But you're going to hear from the other side, no demand. There's no need. These photographs are contrary to what you're going to hear. They will not meet the need because they deny that there is a need.
Argue.
Let's go past COVID now. Now we're past COVID. Now we're into 2022 this year. Last 2 months, I should say. July of 2022, 29,000 TNC drivers. I mentioned that earlier. I mentioned in June of 22, Chief Aquino said there was 3,820 active PA permits. So with less than 50% of the drivers, 14,000 less. In June of 22, they did 1,132,300 rides. Compare that to when both of them were doubled. The taxi cab industry did $1.2 million, 1.225 thousand rides in June of 19. Doing almost identical with half what they've had before. Imagine how many rides they lost because of these lines. That number would be a lot higher. Las Vegas, present and the future. What's going on here in this town right now? I can tell you what the top tourism official in Las Vegas says about Las Vegas. His name's Steve Hill. He's the president and CEO of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. Las Vegas is going through a growth spurt, which will meet or exceed the boom it witnessed during the late 1990s. Do you remember the 1990s? There was a resort opening every year. Las Vegas was growing, continued to grow. The man in charge of tourism in Las Vegas says, we are going to beat that. There's a possibility what we're seeing right now, this present day, is better than the 1990s. And you know what that means? That means growth. That means we need infrastructure. That means we need everything. We need transportation. Everything is going to be needed. He said, Las Vegas is the top choice for people in the areas of tourism, entertainment, hospitality, sports, and transportation to invest their money. He's bullish on Las Vegas. I'm bullish on Las Vegas. I think Las Vegas is growing. I don't see signs of it. There's a lot of people smarter than me and a lot more money that are building billion-dollar resorts, betting on it too. But let's talk about some more, what other people, besides the top tourism official says. Billy Vasiliadis, we all know him, over at R&R. He says, he echoes Steve Hill. Feels like the 90s. We've been reinvented this destination 3 or 4 times during the 1990s, and we're in the middle of a reinvention right now that will make the 1990s seem like it was just okay. I hope and pray that's correct. I've been a lifelong resident. I support this community. I know you guys support this community with the work that you guys are doing here. Brian Bonifant is an expert I hired. He's he's a project manager up at the Center for Regional Studies at the University of Nevada, Reno. In 2021, first off, I never met him before, but I read an article, and it was in this Nevada business thing, and that's how I got in contact with him. Is that in 2021, he was the only economist or economic scientist or whatever he is to properly forecast the Las Vegas recovery. He said, and I quote, "I think it will be a flip of the switch once the vaccine hits the general public. You're going to start seeing some really strong growth numbers." What happened? 2021? Boom. Just like that. Once the COVID, once people were getting the shots, they came back to Las Vegas. It's not just Mr. Bonifat's going to say that. You're going to hear from Mr. Balaban. He said the same thing. Play? Can you hit play on that? Up in the little. This was at the June 21st or 2021 agenda hearing. Don't take my word for it. That demand is up. But they can't keep up. The taxi cab industry themselves can't keep up with that demand.
We heard the testimony.
Huh?
We heard the testimony.
Okay.
We don't need to characterize other people's.
Right, understandable. Okay. I mentioned Steve Hill and Vasiliadis, but here's the CEO of MGM Resorts, the number one employer in the state of Nevada. This is what he thinks is going on with Nevada and Las Vegas in particular. There's nothing economically I see that's slowed things down, nothing from a business standpoint. Everybody. Go ahead. Everybody's bullish on Las Vegas, except for the people sitting to my right.
Sustained.
We all know, well, I don't know if we all do, but Jeremy Aguero is applied analysis. He was quoted in that same article as Brian Bonifant, but he was wrong. But now, 6 months later, he finally sees that, yes, the demand was like a light switch. There is demand. He says that the Las Vegas Strip was back to normal. Only thing not back to normal is the number of cabs that are on the road. Let's talk about one significant event that occurred during COVID. In May 2021 or 21, I got a typo there, I apologize. The Las Vegas,
Your testimony is as to May of 2021.
correct, yeah, that's a typo. The convention center debuted its $1 billion, 1.4 million square foot West Hall expansion. That brought the convention center to $14 million, or 14 million square foot, making it the second largest facility in the country. According to the LVCVCA's website, on a normal year, the convention industry alone brings $11.4 billion in economic impact to Las Vegas. The following pages are taken from the convention center's website. And I go mark it down for, I'll go breeze through this. We've got June or July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March.
It's 21 or 22.
This is
This is
this is this
It
year,
starts in 22, it goes to 23.
23.
Separate pages.
We're not, we, is this 22 or 23? I'm just. Maybe my brain's not
No,
working.
I think those are pre-bookings.
These are pre-bookings.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, okay.
Projected events.
I just, my calendar didn't work in my head. On that one. I don't know.
Understood.
Huh?
Testimony could have been clearer.
Anyway, this is just an example. Like we said, pre-bookings every weekend, every week. Las Vegas has something going on. Most times, multiple things going on at the same time. We don't want people standing out there in taxi lines with no cabs like we saw in the pictures earlier. That's all of these events, all of these conventions need the assistance of motor carrier transportation. We need to step up and provide that. Take it all the way through. Okay. Now, I'm getting to what the Convention Center Authority is perhaps its new slogan, you know, the what happens in Vegas stays here type thing. They have now been promoting Las Vegas as the greatest arena on earth. Events that are happening at Allegiant Stadium have shown that Las Vegas is evolving into the greatest arena on earth. That's not because of football. It's not because of that. It's because of everything Las Vegas offers. T-Mobile, Golden Knights, you know, everything, concerts. Their goal is filling up the hotel rooms. And events like the ones we have witnessed in the past and in the future at T-Mobile, at Allegiant, are fulfilling those purposes. Speaking of Allegiant Stadium, this is one of the biggest success stories, I think, in Las Vegas history. Aside from the parking and transportation, this This arena has put us on the map. We're now getting solicitations for events we could never handle before. And every event is 60-some thousand people that it brings in. We need to accommodate them. We can't keep getting beat. Come to the next, please. Listen to this, man. I'm a huge fan. I mean, but does it get any better than this? In my lifetime, I never thought Las Vegas would have a Super Bowl. This puts us on the map. We're showcasing our great city, our great state to the world. This opens up the doors for many other things. NFL, NC2A, everything. Like we have here. 2023 Pro Bowl. Just this week, the Las Vegas Convention Center approved the funding so that the 2023 Pro Bowl could be held here again in Vegas. It's already held the Pro Bowl last year here. And that same convention center says that the Pro Bowl itself brought in 30,000 out-of-town visitors with an economic impact of $54.7 million. The growth of Las Vegas is unstoppable right now. Why do I say that? It's because Allegiant Stadium now is hosting international events. We're opening up Las Vegas to international populations. They had 2 soccer matches here. One was Barcelona and Madrid. And the other one, I can't remember off the top of my head, but these 2 games alone that they hosted brought in 90,000 out-of-town visitors and generated 137 million in economic impact for our valley. We wouldn't be able to do that 10 years ago. But we're now introducing other parts of this world to our great city. Can't let them down. So what are some other things that people are looking at in Las Vegas? We already know about the Raiders. We already know about the Golden Knights. But let's talk about what's coming. Major League Soccer. They entered into an exclusive negotiation with a couple billionaires, to say the least. One of them is the co-owners of the Milwaukee Bucks, and one of them is the owner of the Premier League's Aston Villa, Bill Aston. They want to bring Major League Soccer team to Las Vegas. They've already scouted out a location. As it's going to most likely would end up on Las Vegas Boulevard in Warm Springs, and that stadium would be built to fit 25 to 30,000 fans. This is a market we never had before. We never had home games for soccer. We never had away games. We never had people coming in to visit for it. Listen to Mr. Hill. We're growing. And it ain't gonna make it look like the 90s. Ain't gonna look like anything. Through July, through basically through the first part of the next year, these are just the events alone that Allegiant Stadium is hosting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 home Raider games, sellouts. Look at all the concerts that we're attracting. We get the Pac-12 football championship game now. Had it last year. We get the new Las Vegas Bowl. We get the Super Bowl, we get the Pro Bowl. There is something going on all the time at Allegiant Stadium. And it has the capacity that needs transportation. Let's look at our airport. This year alone, I have the numbers up there. January, 3 million, February, 3.3, March, 4.2, April, 4.2, May, 4.5. And here's the kicker. June of 2022, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Our airport had the busiest month ever in the history of Las Vegas. With 4.6 million people. Every year or every month, you're seeing a growth. With added growth, there's added demand. This one is perhaps my favorite, next to the Super Bowl and probably Mr. Leonard Balaban's too, is that we just got awarded Sweet 16 and Elite 8 tournament to be held at the T-Mobile Arena for this upcoming NCAA basketball season. I mean, Las Vegas was already college basketball. We held 5 separate conference championships in the first parts of March. And obviously you got the March Madness. This will add another level of tourism to Las Vegas. See, people travel with their teams. And if they're in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8, they're good teams. Their fans are going to follow them. But again, this is something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I mean, Las Vegas was always gambling, and they wouldn't even let us bet on UNLV basketball back when I was growing up. But now that gambling's legal everywhere, everybody's now is being exposed to the Las Vegas. And this partnership that we're establishing with the NFL, the NCAA, is going to grow. Next. Again, for your information, these are just the upcoming events that are a sample of the upcoming events that the T-Mobile's hosting. Something every week. The next one, Formula One announced a partnership with Las Vegas to do a new edition of the 3rd Grand Prix event in the United States. They chose Las Vegas. For those of you who don't know Formula One, it's huge across the world. This is going to bring a new audience to Las Vegas. I mean, look at this track. They're going to be racing cars, Formula One cars, down the Las Vegas Strip. That's a sight. I mean, people are going to want to see that. I'm going to want to see that. The regular events that Las Vegas has, the NASCAR in Vegas, we all know how huge that is. And I know how much a problem transportation is during those types of weekends. EDC, or well, next one is next month. Life is Beautiful's coming downtown. They're expecting 200,000 attendees for this event. Do you think 3,869 taxi driver permits can handle that crowd? I don't. EDC, next one. This was obviously years in the making. It's happened a couple times. A lot of my clients had the transportation for it, but every year we have to import transportation, buses, cars to support this type of a crowd. This is ours. EDC is Las Vegas. And we're farming it out, California to Utah, Portland, so that they can come in and handle the transportation that we cannot accomplish. That's our money. I want that. I want the state to have that. I want you guys to have that. Next. All right. I titled this The New King of Las Vegas, LeBron James. Now, Oakview Group, for those of you who don't know who that is, the largest construction company and developer and builder in the United States. And they acquired 25 acres in Las Vegas. The purpose is to build a sports facility. And for what? An NBA team. And if you listen, what I've read and I know is that the expansion for the NBA is coming within the next 2 years when they renegotiate their TV deal, their TV rights. And at that time, they will be adding 2 new franchises. And the front runners right now are Las Vegas and Seattle. Who's the most famous person in the NBA? LeBron James. Recently became a billionaire, according to first billionaire athlete during his time. What's he say? I want to own a team. I want to buy a team. You know what? And I want it in Las Vegas. NBA, LeBron, NBA is coming. Be ready for it. Next. Is it possible we get a pro team baseball too? Well, I mean, according to the Major League Commissioner, Mr. Manfred, he's made it very clear that he wants the Oakland Athletics to become the Las Vegas Athletics. His statements, Las Vegas is both a better market and close enough to Oakland for the team to maintain its current fan base. They've negotiated, they're negotiating. I mean, obviously don't have a crystal ball and I don't know they're coming. I can't say, yeah, they're going to be here, but they're in progress. And if the commissioner himself, who's already waived any relocation fees, says it's going to happen, who am I to say different? Now, let's talk about some stuff that happened during COVID, during pandemic. Resorts World opened in June of 2021. Over a year now. Hard to believe. Added 3,400 more rooms to Las Vegas, celebrities, all of the likes. Casino industry booming, record after record monthly. They're not slowing down. Next. And Caesars opened their own conference center at the Forum during COVID. They opened a 5,550 square foot convention center. 2 of the largest pillarless ballrooms in the world. I don't know, everything has to be the largest or biggest, but that's Las Vegas for you. But anyway, they're bullish on the Las Vegas market in the future. Circa, first brand new hotel resort built in downtown since 1980. Derek Stevens. Bringing life to Fremont Street. Not afraid. Not afraid of putting his money out there. Downtown Grand built a new tower, added another 500 rooms. Virgin Hotels opened back in March of 2021, bringing people back to work. Wynn opened up their new conference center in 2020. Their website says they have bookings already lined up to 2028. Advance. Area 51 opens, new retail entertainment district there. Now let's talk about the next one here. MSJ Sphere, Madison Square Garden Sphere. Anybody that's driven down Strip or I guess it's like Cobalt sees this ball being built. It's really fascinating. But what it's going to bring. This is like building another T-Mobile. 17,500 guests or seating capacity. We just added a whole new level of entertainment to Las Vegas. And the Las Vegas's ability to sustain that, these construction projects. Fontainebleau. That's back on track. You know, hey, everybody remembers it back for the recession of 2000, early 2000s. But with time, man came back. And now it's in the process of being finished. Dreams Hotel, the next one. They're building a new hotel right across from Mandalay Bay. They're not stopping. Remember, back when I said that there were 63 applications for transportation motor carriers that were filed in the last 2 years alone. Evidence that I just showed you shows that other industries are growing. Transportation is growing. Why isn't the taxi cab industry growing? Let's talk about the locals. Sure, might hear testimony, you'll hear it. That is the taxi cab companies, is the industry providing enough service to the outlying areas and the locals of Las Vegas. Look at what's happened outside of the Las Vegas Strip and the airport in the last few years. Created the Las Vegas ballpark up in Summerlin. Has a seating capacity of 10,000 people, and it's home to the AAA affiliate of the Oakland Athletics, surprisingly enough. And they lead all AAA affiliates, all teams in attendance, with an average of 6,801 people attending this game per event. Not even a taxi stand. Go to the baseball game, have your popcorn, peanuts, a couple beers. Who are you going to call? You're in a taxi stand, you're going to call Uber. We're losing out. This is missed opportunities. Next is downtown Summerlin. We all know what that is. I mean, it was stalled during the recession and stuff, but it's back. It's big. It's huge. It's a focal point, the Summerlin area. It attracts people, has events. Doesn't have transportation. Not a cab stand, not a phone booth, nothing. Go the other way, to the district, off of Green Valley. Go to the Dollar Loan Center. They just built that. Why'd they build that? Well, they built it for the Henderson Silver Knights and the Las Vegas's indoor football team. It holds 6,000 people. It's not on the Strip, so are you going to get a cab? Downtown, Marriott. They're building a hotel right next to the Smith Center. Again, another industry, growing. Okay, this one here, I want to talk to you because this is locals. Station Casinos. We all know who they are. We've lived in here for less than a week, or more than a week. That they are building right now, trains, everything, the Durango Casino and Resort. It's on the 215 Beltway in Durango in the southwest part of this valley.
So they would like to have some transportation once that gets open. But the thing is what they said, Mr. Petita himself, in the earnings call. We are looking to double our portfolio in Las Vegas by the end of this decade. What have they done? They put their money where their mouth is. They purchased 128 acres of Las Vegas Boulevard and Cactus out there towards the South Point M, all that way. They already purchased a 67-acre parcel at Losi and 215, which is in North Las Vegas. They are looking at property in Sky Canyon in the Northwest Valley and property in Inspirada out in Henderson. They're covering the entire valley with resorts, casinos, and top-notch places to hang out. He's bullish. Does he think that something's going to happen in Las Vegas in the economy? No. Now let's talk about this. This is something that we should all start thinking about. Is transportation for the elderly and disabled. The last consensus showed that 34%, over a third of the people that live in Nevada, are over the age of 50. What can we do as an industry to assist them? I was asked that once. And I was thinking, what could we do? Right now, as we sit here today, there is a transportation broker called MTM that handles all of Nevada's state Medicaid transportations. Meaning, if somebody's on Medicaid and says, I need to go from my house to the doctor's office, to the dialysis or something like that, they pick up the phone, say, can you take this person? And they pay it. The state pays it for that. So who can do that? Why can't a taxi cab? Their own website says, why can't it mentions cab? Obviously we can't pick somebody up in a stretcher in a taxi cab, but if we have cars that are handicap accessible, wheelchairs, regular sedans, anything like that, those rides we can get today. All we have to do is put an application in with MTM and get on their service list. This directly helps the community, sheds a bad image. But better yet, it's opening up a market that we've never touched before. Say I picked up Carl's mother and she's like, oh my God, independent cab was great. It was beautiful like that. That's what we want. Because she's going to tell her friend, hey, if you ever need a ride, don't use those guys, use these ones. Use the cabs. They're safe. They're regulated. That's what we want. And it's free money. It's from the state. Nobody's ever touched it. Now, this one, we all know about it. And it is a good service. NRS 706-8825 creates an account whereby you guys, the Taxicab Authority, gives money to the Department of Health and Human Services, the Aging and Disability Services division of that, which allows elderly or financially insufficient people to buy taxi cab vouchers at a discounted price. This program's already there. Does anybody in the public know about that? Anybody outside this room that knows 706 know about this? It's not publicized. Could you imagine what a little bit of marketing and stuff is going to be? You'd say, You know, you don't need to call an Uber. You don't need to call Lyft. You don't need to call it. We have something in place for you already. And this is it. You call us, we give you a voucher, we pick you up. Statute itself says you have to accept the vouchers. It's cash. It's treated as cash. And nobody knows about it. Called the Taxi Assistance Program. Something that needs to be looked into, whether or not I'm part of this industry or not. You want to help the community? The last two things I just said helps the community. Elderly and disabled, financially insecure. Okay, this one is it. You know, this is the $1 million question that everybody's asking me is, how do you get cabs back into the neighborhoods? Well, I mean, Mr. Gibson kind of alluded to it. If you're an employee-employer model, you tell your drivers, go pick up that person at Red Rock, go pick up that person at Green Valley, go pick up that person in Henderson. And they do that. They'll tell you right now, they do. They tell them, hey, we got a dispatch, go pick it up. We got a dispatch, go pick it up. But will the drivers go out there? Or are they just too focused between Bellagio and McCarran, Bellagio, whatever? Therein lies the problem. And I spoke to drivers. And you know what they tell me? Is that we'll go out there. We have no problem going out there to pick up these people. The problem is when we get there, that ride ain't going to be there. That passenger is gone. So is there a problem in the neighborhoods? It's not all these guys' fault. It's not. It's the public. They pit these carriers against each other, Uber and Lyft against them. They call Desert Cab. Hey, come pick me up. I'm out at Green Valley. Next phone call, hey, it's a Lucky. Hey, come pick me up. I'm at Green Valley. They jump on an app, an Uber or Lyft. Hey, come pick me up. And it ain't that they won't go out there. They will, but they know there is a greater chance of that passenger already being gone because the public has pitted the transportation companies against each other. Don't do it. I mean, that's good money. I mean, they get charged by the mile. I mean, if you're picking somebody up at my house in Summerlin, driving them all this way, that's a huge, huge fare. So what can we do? How do we stop that? How do we alleviate the taxi cab driver and the owner's resistance to go out there and to actually provide that type of service? Now, if I were a member of the industry, I would go directly, Mr. Armstrong, the administrator, I would work directly with the staff. I would be able, we have to figure out a way to get these people in there. And what I've come to, and I've talked to one of the makers of the taxi meters, Curb, and I said, is there any way you can hit that person's credit card for a hold on their credit card to let them put some skin in the game that they're going to be there waiting for you if you drive out there to pick him up? And he said that can be done. Why don't we do that? I mean, if you call a restaurant, they put your reservation down, hold your credit card. If you don't show up, they ding you for a cancellation fee. It can be done. You guys, Mr. Armstrong, have the authority to do what I just said. And that will eliminate the risk of deadheading out there and deadheading back. Because that costs the company's money and it costs the driver's money every time that happens. So why not take the for sure thing at McCarran or Reed as opposed to Henderson? It's a no-brainer. But we can eliminate that risk with one simple rule: cancellation fee. Make that person put some skin in the game. So he's not calling Lucky, he's not calling Desert, he's not calling Uber, he's not calling Lyft. If I calls Desert Cab, said, yep, can you pick me up in Summerlin? Yep, okay, what's your credit card? Okay, see you there. We'll be there at this time. Everybody has a meeting of the minds. That's how we get people back out into the neighborhoods, guys. But it's got to be beneficial for the industry to want to take that step. The only other idea that came up is something that they're already experimenting, and they're going to say it works, it's working better, is universal dispatch. But we have too many different people on Cabot, curb, stuff like that. I don't know if it can happen. But if there was a universal dispatch, it would be helpful to the neighborhoods. So back to the elements. 706-88-272E, benefit the public and the taxi cab business. Demand's there. We know it. We're just getting beat by the volumes, sheer volume of numbers. We are outnumbered. 30,000 to 3,000. We're 10% on that, on those highways. We need to focus in on what we are good at. It's our service, quality, and safety. Every day there's something on the news. Uber driver did this, Lyft driver did that. People are getting used to it. But those are the people we need to get back. I've explained to you, I've shown you the growth, I've shown you this, I've shown you the taxi line. I've talked to you about the illegal operators. Nobody's going to admit that there's not any illegal operators out there. They're there. We got to get those people back. And how do we get that back? By getting with the demand. We need to increase the supply to meet the demand. Listen, in 2015, Uber and Lyft, they were the shiny new nickel. They came on, bulldozed everybody. But they're losing their luster. They can't do what they've done for the last 7 years. They can't continue that. They haven't made a profit in any single quarter, ever. They're subsidizing it, everything. But those days are long gone. Don't take it from me. Take it from Uber's CEO. Prices and wait times have gone up for Uber passengers. That's good for us. We recognize that the era of growth at all costs is over. Once again, good for us. They can't keep coming in and subsidizing and doing everything. They are losing money. Investors are increasingly demanding not just growth, but profitable growth. So how do you grow? Raise your rates, your revenue goes up. Screw over the drivers and their salaries and say you're not going to get 20, you're only going to get 20% now. That'll risk losing their drivers. There's only two ways you can do it. Raise your rates, screw the drivers. And either way, that is a benefit to this industry here. They raise their rates, they're more comparable to taxi cab rates. They get their drivers mad at them, they go knock on these guys' doors. Because everybody needs to eat. We talked about this for a second. Just want to put it into black and white, into reality of what we're looking at here and how this is affects my application and the requests that I've made for you guys. This deals with the transportation network companies. In November of 2019 was their highest amount ever in the state of Nevada at 44,000 permitted TNC drivers. In May 2021, before Governor Sisolak allowed the surge pricing during the COVID times. They were down to 14,000 active TNC drivers. We talked about this in July. There was 19,000, and in July of this year, 29,000. Divide that. They got 10,000 drivers in 1 year alone. It's unfathomable. Listen, you divide that by 30, 1 year, 365 days, by 10,000. They're putting 27 drivers per day on the road for an entire year. I've been asking for 35 cars for 2.5 years. In just 2 days, the span of this hearing, Monday and Tuesday, Uber and Lyft will have surpassed my request. Numbers don't lie. There's demand out there. April of 2019, then Chair Stan Olson made the obvious statement to the industry. I see that there is a need, or otherwise, how could there be 41,000 TNC drivers? It's the obvious. If there was no demand and there was no need, they would not exist. Okay. Qualifications. This is the second prong, I guess, of the application process. That is, it's governed by NAC 706.453. Clear and convincing evidence, my financial ability to provide continuous service. My financials have been submitted to the state. You have them in front of you. Do I have enough money to run a business? Yes, I do. Do I have enough money to make sure that that business is continuous? Yes, I do. End of question. Staff, your staff is going to say the same. They're going to say that I am financially capable. You're going to hear from this whole side of the room that I'm an idiot because my pro forma is off. And I'm going to ask them, show me where it says a pro forma is required to show my suitability in 706-8827 or 706.453. It's not. It's a pro forma. It's an estimate. It's an assumption. They're not supposed to be actual. Thank God somebody here on the staff realizes that.
Carson, let's
Thank you.
stay away from argument.
My documents have been produced. He or she has no conviction of a felony or crime of moral involving moral turpitude. My wife voluntarily submitted background searches and metro scopes for you guys. There is no evidence of any crimes, felony, or moral turpitude. I don't care. It's public. I don't care. I got in trouble when I was 18 years old. Got a DUI from a fraternity thing. Learned my lesson. Haven't had a drink of alcohol in almost 20 years. Live and learn. But I'm not ashamed of it. Everything that I do grows me as a character. I hold 2 privileged licenses from the state as well. one from the Nevada Transportation Authority, and one from the State Bar of Nevada. Both of them have similar standards as the ones set forth in this application process. Never had problems with either of them. Not associated with controlled or controlled. I mean, no. I mean, I've known these guys forever, for 20 years. I mean, the only person that's unsuitable that I'm familiar with is Mr. Winter. We were partners for 19 years. You know?
I couldn't.
All right, now, the other one here is, I mean, let's go back to C, I guess, when I'm controlling it. Mr. Aquino, when he was the chief at that time, backgrounded me, contacted references, everything. He didn't find anything wrong with me. Pretty hard to. Talk about D. Sufficient experience or has employed persons with sufficient experience to manage a taxi cab company. What is sufficient experience? I mean, the labor pool on that side is pretty small. There's 16 companies in Las Vegas. But am I not qualified? Do I not have sufficient experience to run a taxi cab company? I think it's absurd. I know 706 as good or better than everybody sitting in this room. This is what I've done for 20 years. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead. This is it. Taxi cabs are regulated by NRS and NAC 706. I know these people. I know these statutes. I know these regs. I've been working with 706 carriers for over 2 decades. I have successfully filed dozens of applications and received approval from the Nevada Transportation Authority for common motor carriers. I have assisted them in every aspect of their business, from getting the correct insurance, safety issues, driver training, road tests, setting up employee files, driver files, setting up the vehicle maintenance files, getting the cars on the road, making sure they're properly decaled, making sure that they meet the requirements of NRS 706. Once these guys became operational, I've assisted them with liability, workers' comp issues, employment issues, the whole realm of it. Have I ever given somebody a key to a taxi cab and said, go drive? No, I have not. But if anybody's qualified that hasn't been in the industry, do you need to look any further? I know this stuff. And I know that there's a learning curve, and I still plan to hire somebody. I'm in the untenable position that I don't have a company until you guys grant it to me. So can I go over and say, hey, will you come be my manager? Yeah, what for? Oh, well, got a cab company. I'm waiting to see if it's approved. Click. Call me when you get a license. You're not going to quit a day job to come over here at a crapshoot. But I can tell you this, this is what I've done. This is what sets me apart. It's Las Vegas Limousines. I bought this company. Me and my wife bought this company. Transportation company in Nevada, in Las Vegas. We're 50% owners of this. We're currently operating 34 limos, sedans, and SUVs, and 7 charter buses, the big ones. 41 cars that I'm operating today. Operationally, not day to day. I'm only asking for 35 here. We are currently regulated and in good standing with the Nevada Transportation Authority. We fall under the same regulations similar to taxi cab companies. Look at our facilities, pictures. This isn't a fly-by-night operation. We have parking, we have an office space, 3 bays for mechanics, 2 vehicle lifts, parts rooms. The gate is, the facility is gated, monitored by video surveillance system. Here's a cop picture of maintenance going on in one of the limos, waiting for another one to come in. On the far right is just vehicles that we own, that we're putting on the street today, tonight. We are picking up passengers. We are transporting them from place to place within the state of Nevada, right now, as we're talking. Next. I mean, these are just more pictures. I just want to impress upon you is that to call me insufficient is an insult. Because I know not everybody had no experience as a lawyer, or became a lawyer. Does that mean I can't own my own law firm, which I do? No. Do I learn something every day being a lawyer? Yes, something new. Is there a learning curve to any business? Sufficient? Yes. But if not, what if you say I don't have sufficient experience? My partner, Tony Bohr, is running our day-to-day operations for Las Vegas Limousines, an unlimited certificate, meaning we can have as many cars as we want on the road at any given time. Is he not sufficient? He's owned and operated a limousine and a motor company for over a decade. Is it a taxi cab company? No. Is it a transportation company? Yes. Is it regulated? Yes. Is it regulated by 706? Yes. I have knowledge of the law, regulations, the regulatory process, citations, hearings, everything. I've done all of that. My wife's an accountant. She knows books. If I need to, I can hire Mr. Bohr, who has operational experience, hands-on operational experience of a company bigger than the one I'm asking you for today. During the background, Chief Aquino asked me, let me see the financials of LVL. Public record, NTA, it's fine, I don't care. So it's provided to him. LVL is fully operational and profitable, successful. Just the 2 years that we've been operating it. And I can tell you this, my pro forma that I submitted with that application looks nothing like the actuals. Because a pro forma is a pro forma, an assumption. Was there expenses I forgot to put in? Maybe, but you learn. My money. If I go out of business because I'm underestimating my costs, guess what? Businesses fail. It's not for them to try to protect me. Brent, don't get in this business because you're too stupid. Your pro forma says so. That's what I've heard. That's their defense.
Jackson, we've never said that, literally.
Sustained.
Oh, I could probably point it out. Color scheme, that's one of the requirements. I just threw that in there. I don't know how the authority, honest, I don't know how you pick it out, but they asked me for which colors I wanted to do, and I said silver and gold. It's a throwback to the Golden Knights and the Silver and Black Raiders. So I said silver and gold. I thought it'd be something I could do for the community.
This last document, I'm not going to let in at this time. You can proffer this document when he's a witness. You're trying to testify for a witness here.
Okay. You're gonna hear a lot of ifs and buts, but I want you to focus on what I've said here.
An oral argument.
Okay.
Have any other evidence? you want to
Yes.
present? Mr. Carson?
Yes.
While we have a second, can I ask a question? I've noticed the screen where Mr. Carson's been testifying and kind of read from that. And the board, it seems like the members have a binder.
Mr. Winter, I am going to address this particular issue.
Okay.
I am.
I've been called Mr. Winter many times. That's something.
Winter.
Oh, Winter. I apologize.
That's okay.
I
Not a
wrote down
mistake.
the wrong name.
Chicken dinner.
I apologize.
Not needed.
Change it in my notes too.
In conclusion,
Did I move for a break? Carson's looking.
I'm like
to see
5
if he
minutes,
wants
I'm
more.
like 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna say in conclusion, we are fit, willing, and able. The proposed operation will be consistent with the legislative policies set forth in NRS 706151. The granting of the certificate will not unreasonably or adversely affect other carriers in the territory. That the holders of the
Mr. Carson,
existing,
this sounds like oral argument.
it's just a recap of the evidence.
An oral argument is that you're making, that you've made your elements and your evidence.
Okay.
So I'm not precluding you from doing it. You can do it with your lawyer hat on,
Yep.
not your witness hat.
Nope, at that point, I'll rest my testimony.
Did you provide a copy of this to opposing counsel?
No.
Would you please do so? Yes? Okay. I'm going to exercise my authority pursuant to Nevada Administrative Code 706948 and allow you, Mr. Carson, to take this presentation and divide it into exclude from it. Oh, for the record, if people are saying what 948 is, that's written prepared testimony. I'm going to let you excise from it your wife and your opening, excise from it legal material, and put in a separate binder the actual facts, pictures, your statistics where you're making arguments about general economic conditions, because otherwise what you've been asking us to look at is not in the record. This hasn't been marked and put into evidence, and it can't come in the shape it's in right now because you've mixed evidence and argument. So if you would like to do that, you may. If you don't want to do that, that's up to you. But I have the discretion to allow written prepared testimony. I will. Madam Secretary, reserve Exhibit 3 for that if Mr. Carson presents it. Is that any other procedural issues on that? Okay. We're going to stand at adjournment until 1:00 p.m. And at that time, you may present your additional witnesses, Mr. Carson.
Thank you.
Before we go off the record, Mr. Wynn, did I answer your question about?
Yeah, you kind of did. You're handling or dealing with the binder. I thought it was going to be more like demonstrative exhibits.
Well,
and it wasn't going in the record. I do object to any part of that going in the record.
so I'm going
because I
to,
haven't seen any.
I'm going to allow people to make their record if he offers. I don't know if he's going to come back with
Fair
Exhibit 3. So if
Gotcha.
it comes back with Exhibit 3, people will be able to make their record on whether 3 comes in or not. Just because I've marked it, this isn't admitted.
Gotcha.
I've just reserved an exhibit for it. The issue I'm faced with is we have mixed apples, oranges, and bananas in one document. And I can only, by reason of evidence under the APA, take apples.
And a clarification question regarding procedure. You said when we come back at 1, you could present his next.
Well,
witness.
I stand corrected.
Okay.
You may cross.
Okay.
There'll be, Mr. Carson will be available for cross.
Okay.
And then you move on. And good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was my
Yep.
question.
Thank you.
What a mess. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
That's something.
So you can go ahead and forward that out.